Good morning, boys and girls. How are you today? We are moving on to our story called The Pet Shop. Please follow along as I read, and then you'll be able to read it again to yourselves or listen again so you'll be able to answer the questions. The Pet Shop. The owner of the pet shop was named Maria Sanchez. She loved the pet shop, but she was not making money. Each month she had less money. She knew that if things didn't change, she would have to close the shop very soon. She had tried different ways to interest more people in buying pets. She put ads in the newspaper and she did a lot of other things. Maria Sanchez usually spent a lot of time thinking about how to make her pet shop more interesting and about how she could make the pet shop earn more money. But she had never thought of cooking up a kind of food that Waldo made. She stood there in the kitchen of her pet shop watching Waldo pour different things that he had cooked into a big bowl. She couldn't believe what was happening. Birds and squirrels were looking in the window. Dogs and cats were running around outside the window. The animals in the pet shop were howling and screeching and jumping all around. "What makes the animals act that way?" she asked Waldo. He smiled and looked up from his cooking. "My food," he said. "They love it." She picked up a large spoon. "Do you mind if I try some?" she asked. What do you think's going to happen, boys and girls? Do you think she'll like it? Have you ever eaten dog food before? I haven't. "No," he said. "It's very good food." She dipped her spoon into the bowl, filled it with food, and put it in her mouth. She tried not to make a sour face, but the food tasted bad, very bad. "My," she said, trying to smile. "That certainly has an unusual taste." She wasn't really lying. The food did have an unusual taste, unusually bad. Waldo finished cooking some corn and rice. He dumped the corn and the rice into the bowl with the other things he had cooked. Then he began to whistle. And he walked into the pet shop with his food. Maria followed. Waldo began opening the bird cages. "No!" she shouted. "We'll never be able to catch them." "They won't fly away," Waldo said, and he was right. They landed on his shoulders and on his head. Two of them tried to get into the bowl of food, but he brushed them away with his hand. Those two birds landed on his shoulder and sat there. Next, Waldo went to the cages with the cats. He opened all the cages. "No!" Maria shouted. "They'll go after the birds." "No, they won't," Waldo said, and he was right again. The cats rubbed against Waldo's legs, and they put their tails high in the air. They meowed and purred loudly. Next, Waldo opened the cages for the dogs. "No," Maria started to say. Then she stopped and said, "I know, they won't chase the cats." "Right," Waldo said. The dogs didn't pay any attention to the cats. They barked and wagged their tails and jumped up to get the food from the bowl. Waldo held the bowl high so they couldn't reach it. Then Waldo opened all the other cages. Rabbits and hamsters and other animals came out and tried to get close to Waldo. Maria couldn't believe what she saw. Here, Waldo was holding a bowl of food above his head. More than 50 animals were around him and on him. Waldo said, "Now we can show people the pets that you have for sale." Waldo walked to the front of the window of the pet shop. He sat down with his back at the window. The animals crowded close to him and tried to reach the bowl, but he held it above his head. Maria looked outside the window. People were passing by the pet shop, stopped and looked. They smiled and pointed to the different animals. At first, there were only 4 or 5 people standing in front of the window, but soon there was a crowd of large people of more than 30. But soon there was a large crowd of more than 30 people. Waldo was now feeding animals. He held a little bit of food high in the air. The birds flew from his shoulders into his head. They flew around and took the food from his hand. Maria watched. The other animals watched. The people outside the window watched. The birds went back to Waldo's shoulder and head. Then Waldo fed the dogs and cats and rabbits and hamsters and all the other animals. The people outside were laughing and pointing. And here's a picture of Waldo with the bull above his head and all the animals clamoring around him.